go with a very special episode or two here at History She Wrote. You see, we have some awesome kids going in and out of our studios, and they often get caught up in whatever we happen to be putting together at the moment. And these kids are good sports about it all. They end up acting in our documentaries, lending their names to our podcasts, explaining newfangled technology, and getting dragged along to the most ridiculously obscure and esoteric places where history actually happened. So we thought it might be nice to let them ask the questions for once. So here is our second episode of the kids from Sarajevo to Red Africa and the things they wonder about in history.
Zanima me sve što se tiče princeza. Da li nose prave haljine kao što su nosile nekada ili nose neke krune koje su kao lažne ili su nosile isto kao što su nekada princeze nosile. I zanima me da li su krune teške ili su lake. I da li su te priče o princezama istinite ili se nešto malo dodali?
Elena moja ljubava, the fiercest girl in Serbia. What a fantastic question. Let's answer the easiest part first. Yes, princesses do wear very old crowns and often have very old style clothing for certain occasions. And it's not just the princesses. If you look at pictures of Buckingham Palace, for instance, you'll see that the uniforms worn by the staff on certain occasions look very old-fashioned to us. They've been modernized and changed over the hundreds of years. The British royal family has been the embodiment of the British Empire. But in the interest of creating a feeling of connection with the past, the uniforms still reflect those worn in the past. Some of the crowns are also very old. The imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire was made in the 900s, so it's over 1,000 years old. Since there's no Holy Roman Emperor today, no one's wearing it right now. But it does still exist in the imperial treasury in Vienna in Austria. If you would like to know the oldest crown still in use by a royal family, that would be in Sweden. King Eric XIV's crown has been used in coronation since 1561. Princesses don't tend to wear crowns, but they do wear a lot of tiaras for certain occasions. And some of those are very old. Some have very interesting stories behind them. Amongst the British, one of the oldest tiaras was still in use by Her late Majesty the Queen, and it's called the Diamond Diadem. It was made in 1820, so you see it's been around for over 200 years. If you look at the money printed during Queen Elizabeth II's reign, she's wearing this tiara in it. There are actually people who study and track the beautiful tiaras of the world and their amazing histories. The pictures and stories they tell about these very elegant headpieces, they're incredible. Now, about our princess stories being true. Yes, we do a lot of research here, as you've watched your mom do. Sometimes there are stories about a princess that aren't true, but everyone tells as though they are true. And sometimes there are stories that we think might be true, and they could be true, but we don't have actual proof. One example of a princess story like this is the story of Princess Yelena of Serbia. When the Russian imperial family was taken to Yekaterinburg in 1917, where they were eventually murdered, the story is that the Princess Yelena followed them and would go to the guardhouse shouting that she should be able to visit them and make sure they were okay. It was an extremely brave thing to do, especially knowing what happened to the Tsar and his family, as well as Yelena's own husband. But we don't have proof it happened just like that. We only have the stories that we were told. What we do is then look at other things Yelena did, things happening at the time, and make a decision about whether the event is probably true. And I think that even if Yelena didn't go yelling at the top of her lungs at the guard gate in Yekaterinburg, she probably certainly did create a fuss. In the case of Katarina Zrinski in Croatia, we know that she was the first Croatian woman to publish a book for a fact. And we know that she was very involved in the planning of the Magnet Rebellion that ended up with her husband killed and Katerina herself imprisoned in a convent. Katerina really was as brilliant and as brave as her stories show. We're just missing a few exact details. One historical queen we have very little proof of any information about is Makeda, the Queen of Sheba. However, Makeda is mentioned in the Bible as a part of King Solomon's story, and she's featured very, very prominently in Ethiopian history. Old stories about Makeda are really all that we have, and those old stories have influenced the world that we live in very much. In this case, we tell the story of Makeda, but we also mention that it is based on stories, and we can't prove what is or isn't true within the stories. And remember, sometimes we find proof of things that changes everything in history, or at least it changes the way we understand history.
Hello, my name is Miat. I love stories about dragons and superheroes. Have you ever filmed and said a real castle?
Miat, the bravest Montenegrin boy in the world. I agree with you. Castles and dragons are amazing and fun. Did you know that at Wawel Cathedral in Krakow, Poland, they actually have the bones of what is said to be a dragon? They've been hanging there for at least 500 years. The dragon is said to have lived in a cave under the cathedral that would be built there and was supposedly defeated by the sons of the founder of Krakow himself. And at the ruins of Medvedgrad Castle in Zagreb, Croatia, there are no dragon bones. But there is a story of Barbara of Celje, whose husband was the Holy Roman Emperor. Barbara was a very smart and very driven woman. And as often happened to smart and driven women, certain people in power resented this very much. They created a story of Barbara as an evil witch who hid a treasure under Medvedgrad Castle and then turned into a giant serpent to guard it. There are stories of dragons all over the world, along with stories of how those dragons were defeated. And yes, we have been lucky enough to film a few castles, although we'd love to film even more. One of my favorites is the castle at Ozalj in Croatia because so much history happened there. It's a museum now, and when you walk the floors, you can almost feel yourself traveling back in time to the planning of the Magnets' rebellion. In the Chateau de Caen in Normandy, France, there's one large room which still has the original floor tiles. It's an amazing experience to walk somewhere and realize that your feet are touching the same tiles as William the Conqueror. I had the best time answering questions from the kids, questions from our super smart youngsters. And I hope that there were also some adults who may have gotten a few questions answered along the way as well. And I have to say here, even though I'm grown up now, I'm very glad to know that there are still kids like Miat who are very interested in stories about dragons. The world has come a long way in history, but there are still dragons to fight today. Keep reading those stories, Miat. You never know when they might come in handy.
What to do